Welcome to the WorkJoy Jam. I'm Beth Stallwood, your host and the founder of WorkJoy. In this episode, I am joined by the wonderful Stephen Watson, and Stephen is an expert in all things time management. And I know for sure that many of our listeners are struggling with this area, with so many demands, so many different things to focus on, and it all seeming like quite a lot and never really having the time to do the things that you really, really want to do. When I heard of Stephen and I saw his book, Time Limited, I really wanted him to come on the podcast because I think it's one of those things that can really stifle the joy in your life if you're struggling with your time. And I'm thinking here, how can he help us to help ourselves to maybe approach our time management in a different way, to help us to be able to feel like we have the influence over it that we want and are able to find the time to do the things we really, really want to do. I really enjoyed my conversation with Stephen. I hope you enjoy it too. Here it is. Hello and welcome to the WorkJoy Jam. In this episode, I'm really excited to be joined by Stephen Watson. And when I connected with Stephen, it was around his book launch. And I was like, we all on the WorkJoy Jam need a little bit of what Stephen is talking about. And I'm not going to tell you because I'm going to let Stephen introduce himself and tell us a bit more about him, his work and what he does. So Stephen, over to you.
Hello. Hi, Beth. It's lovely to be here with you, and I appreciate you inviting me onto your podcast. So,
thank you for coming.
So my specialism is time management. I'm a teacher and a coach, and I work with lots of different people in loads of different settings, really. I work with business owners, people who are managing staff. I work with people who are basically just trying to manage their life and fit everything in a world where everything runs at 100 miles an hour and there's so many things that people are, so many things that are demanding of everybody's time. I just help people to get on top of that and structure it all in a way that allows them to make the most of their time.
Amazing. And everyone, I'm sure, can probably tell right now that that is exactly the reason I wanted you to come on here. Because this question of time management, I think for so many people, I know for so many of our listeners, is one of the biggest challenges that people are facing. There are so many things to do. There are so many things at work to do, but also in life, that trying to fit that in and make it happen and feel like you're doing a good job of stuff is often one of the things that comes up as I'm really struggling with this. So let's talk about this big subject of time management and tell us a little bit about how you came to work on this and how your story helps you to help other people with this particular subject.
Yeah, sure. So I'm as I said, a teacher and a coach, and I've been working with lots of different types of people since 2004. I'd finished at university. I decided to take the plunge and start my own business. It was kind of a no-lose situation. If it all went wrong, then I didn't have kind of mortgage and family, kids, things like that to worry about particularly. So I went for it then. And I was working 6, sometimes 7 days a week on my business, thinking that was the way to make a business work. I was very much of the opinion that if you work harder, you'll get better results. So I was enjoying my work. Don't get me wrong; I've always enjoyed that. But the moment where things really focused towards time management was, as I say, working 6-7 days a week, and my mum was diagnosed with a terminal brain disease called progressive supranuclear palsy, and I'd never heard of it before. Not many people have. It's quite a rare kind of condition, but basically the expectation from diagnosis is that you'll live around 6 years from diagnosis. But during that time, you'll gradually deteriorate. And so thinking of Mum's experience, she lost her ability to balance first. So she was in a wheelchair. then lost her ability to swallow, which meant that she couldn't eat or drink. She had to be fed through a tube. Her eyesight went, and amongst other things, she lost her ability to communicate. It's a horrible, horrible disease. And so we were given this prognosis and this information about this disease, this terrible disease that we'd been told Mum had got. And I just thought, well, this is crazy. Something's got to change. I'm working long days, long hours, and the things that are most important to me, I'm not making time for, or not making enough time for. So I decided immediately to cut down my working week to 4 days so that I could spend at least one and sometimes 2 days of quality time with Mum. Go and take her out, really get to know her, spend some great time with her, and make the most of the time that we had left together. And so I fully expected at that point that my business was going to suffer, because the way I saw it, you can't just cut 2 days off your working week and expect everything to be okay. But I was willing to give it a go, and to be honest, it wasn't the most important thing. I thought, well, I'm a teacher, and I'll find a job if I need to. So I started looking at as many different time management strategies and tips and techniques that I could possibly lay my hands on. Some of them worked, some of them didn't. But over the time, I gradually learned why they were working and why they weren't working, and the way to get more out of the time that you've got. So thankfully, I'm glad to say my business didn't just stay the same. It actually got a lot better and started performing even better than it did before. And I was working, a third of the time. So people started asking me, how on earth are you doing that? Can you teach me how to do it? And so that's what I'm doing. And that's how I've ended up doing what I do now. I wrote a book on time management called Time Limited, as you've mentioned before. And the most pleasing part of it all was I got that quality time with Mum. I got to know her better than I probably ever would have done if she'd have never been ill. Yeah. And now I still use that time for family and things that are most important to me. So I've got a 3-year-old little girl. I spend 2 full days a week with her, and doing lovely things, and going to swimming and taking her to gymnastics, and just enjoying all the things that disappear very quickly when you've got kids. So yeah, that's how I got into it.
It's really interesting. And first of all, just my heart goes out to you about that diagnosis and having to go through that situation with your mum. And there's also a thing here about the impetus of something so horrible happening and how it's really transformed how you do things. And sometimes we see these things, don't we, as just the bad bits, but what they can offer you as well. And I'm sitting here thinking that you probably never had any intention, and maybe you did, but tell me, you probably never had any intention of becoming a person who teaches people how to manage their time. That wasn't your business to start with, I imagine.
No, I was working with, it was leaders really that I was working mostly with in a business setting. I was working with a lot of accidental managers. So people who get promoted into a management position because they were good at what they did in their job, but then find themselves not doing any of the things that they were good at, and now having this beast of a job that they don't know how to do. So and time management was actually a big part of that as well. But you're right. It's terrible. A diagnosis like that, and it's an awful thing. And you can say, oh, try and take the positives. At the time, there just aren't any positives. It's just a shell shock to your life. It's awful. And it hits you like a train. But I suppose there are some things that you can take from any given situation, aren't they? And this, I almost see as kind of a legacy to my mum, because it's her that set me on this path, and it's become my focus.
That's a really lovely way of thinking about it. And even if you can't see that in the moment because you are hit like a train and it's terrible, the learning from after the situation is a really interesting one. I love that's really nice to think about it as the legacy that you're taking, and the legacy is passing down the generations, and now you use that time with your daughter,
Yeah.
and how fantastic that is. And I can imagine right now there are many people who are listening here going, hang on a minute, I've got young kids, I want to spend more time with my kids, I am so busy and stressed out and working so much and not focusing and not spending that precious time.
Yeah.
So here I'm going to get to it. We've obviously not got like time to go into every technique and things that you would work through, but can you tell us some of the high level, some of the basics, some of the foundational things that you think are really important for any of us who want to get better at managing our time to be able to focus on the important things in our lives?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm conscious that there's a range of different people who'll be listening to this, and some of them will be employed, some of them will be self-employed.
Yeah.
And I realise that not everything might fit for every individual, but hopefully there'll be one or two things that do. If you're employed, I think having that positive line of communication with the people who are in a position to make those decisions about your working hours and your working days are really good, because I don't know many bosses who are not interested in being more productive and achieving goals quicker and having staff that are happier, and with a better balance. And there's no manager in the world wouldn't want those things, but it's about being able to show them that they can have those things. But with people who are working on their own, they're self-directed, it's much easier to implement these things a lot quicker, of course. But I suppose when I first started, one of the first things I did, as you do with everything when you want to know about something, I Googled it. I Googled time management. So first thing that I noticed,
70 million different items of life come up.
Oh, well, get this, Beth. I Googled time management and there was 4.5 billion results came back.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, there is no shortage of information about and tips about time management. But I thought to myself, why are people still struggling with it when there's so much information out there about it? And this is what I mean. I said to you before that I started working out why some things work and why some things don't. And there was two main things that I took from it. One of them was about habits. So most of the things that you read about say that choices, decisions, and priorities are the keys to time mastery. And they'll say if you want something enough, you'll do it. There's stuff like that. And I do agree with that to an extent. I think it's got its place and it is important. But what really made me think was when it was pointed out to me that around half of the things that you do on a day-to-day basis are nothing to do with those conscious decisions and choices. They're habits. They're things that you do routinely. So, for instance, you probably get up at a similar time. You probably have the same relationship with your alarm clock that you do every other day. If you're a snooze hitter, you're a snooze hitter. If you're not, you get up. You'll have the same bathroom routine. I'm pretty sure of that. You'll have probably the same thing for your breakfast. You maybe drive the same way to work if you have to go out to work. You'll have the same routines. And we have these moments in our days. You think about driving to work, for instance. It's quite often you get in the car and you don't even remember the journey. You just arrive at work and you do the same things as you always do when you arrive at work. It's crazy how Groundhog Day it really is. So habits was the first thing. I started working out how you can develop habits and how you can attach desired actions that will really help you with time management to existing behaviors that you do naturally anyway. So that just as naturally as when you go to the toilet, then you wash your hands, you'll be doing things that really help you. I'll tell you more about that in a little bit. But the other parts, that was the first bit about habits. The second part was about structure. And people talk about time management in terms of symptoms. So they'll say, my email inbox is overflowing and I can't keep on top of it. Or I've got too many meetings, my meeting's overrun. Or I procrastinate, or I get distracted, or my social media, or there's so many things. They're all symptoms, and people jump about from thing to thing to thing, and they never really master any of them. And I think from my work, I noticed that there's key things that have to be in place before you can even think about the rest of it. And so I put it in a bit of a diagram called the pyramid of time mastery. And now it's what my coaching and all my courses and my book and everything I do is based on this pyramid of time mastery. And that says that there's 5 key blocks at the bottom of the pyramid that you have to get in place if you want to master your time. And those are the 2 things really, the structure and the habits.
Right. Can we dig into some of these things? Because I think it's really interesting to think about, number one, habits. They are the things that either make us or break us. I'm totally in line with that.
Yeah.
I love how you talk about tagging things on to habits you already have, to make it easier, I suppose, to build new habits and to try new things. Can you give us some examples of how that might work in the real world?
Yeah, absolutely, I can. And it's very easy for me to do that because I do it every day for myself, so I can just talk about my own time habits. The process I'm talking about with attaching things is called when and then. So it's just when you're first starting out, you think, when I do this, then I do that, and it drills it into you that you do that. So one of the domino effect time habits is scheduling time to schedule your time. So many people don't do it. They fly by the seat of their pants, and they just, what happens. But the people who are successful with their time don't do it by accident. They do it on purpose. They will sit there and they will schedule time to actually have a look at their schedule and say, what are the most important things, the big rocks, if you've ever seen that analogy, that I need to fit in. Things like my health, my fitness, my relationships, where are they going to fit? They're the most important things in all of our lives. And if we neglect them, then it has a negative impact on everything else. So you've got to schedule those in first. And then after that, you start thinking, right, what are the important tasks that I need to do this week for my work? Schedule them in. And then the rest of the time will always get taken up by all of the other stuff, the sand in the demonstration. I don't know if you've seen the rocks, pebbles and sand analogy, but it's, if you put the sand in first, it fills up all the week. It's the stuff that just turns up and you have to deal with it. It will fill all the space that you allow it to. But put the big rocks in first, the really important things, get your important tasks in, and then just let the sand have the rest of the space. So scheduling time to schedule your time is really important. For me, the when and then on that is when I close my laptop at the end of the day, then I have a look at my schedule and I think about those things. But I have another one as well, which is that I do in the morning. So when I wake up in the morning, one of the first things I do habitually is go downstairs and make a coffee. I put the kettle on. So when I put the kettle on, then I think of ACME, ACME. And that leads me on to a little bit of a story of how we got to that, because it probably doesn't mean anything to you at the moment. Do you remember Wile E. Coyote?
I do remember Wile E. Coyote. And when you said ACME, I was thinking of like him chucking stuff over the edge of like mountains and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly what it is. I started thinking, I watched it. I don't know. It just came on TV one day. I was looking at it and I was thinking, wow, yeah, this really, it's a kid's cartoon and it's supposed to just be enjoyable. I get that. But I was looking at it and I was thinking, wow, yeah, why can he never catch that roadrunner? Because actually, he has some pretty good ideas. There's some of the things that he tried to do, which was like using free bird seed and lowering a trap. You think, yeah, that's viable. That could work. He also had loads of equipment, everything he could want. They always had ACME written on it, didn't it? It was all the rockets and the contraptions. He had all the resources that he could need, but he could never catch the roadrunner. And when you look at every single one of his failures, his failed attempts, they were all avoidable. And they were all things that he could have prevented if he'd have thought about it. So, for instance, getting on the rocket that goes faster than the Roadrunner goes, but not knowing how to stop the rocket, or doing something on the side of a cliff where you have that moment where he steps off the edge and then there's a 5-second pause and he waves at the camera and then drops to his doom. Or the contraption that I was talking about with the bird seed, he got his leg trapped in it, the poor thing, and it dragged him down and he ended up getting trapped in the thing instead. But they were all avoidable, and I started thinking the answer to all of his problems was right in front of him the whole time. It's the word acme. And if he had thought about acme, he could have prevented a lot of those things. And we all do that on a daily basis. We all have these same mistakes. Maybe we don't fall off cliffs and climb on rockets, but we do make mistakes that we could avoid. And ACME, as an acronym, stands for anticipate. So going back to my when and then, when I'm boiling the kettle, I'm thinking of ACME. Can I anticipate any problems that could arise with what I'm doing today?
Yeah.
So, for instance, am I traveling at rush hour? Are my meetings very close together? Stuff like that. Can I anticipate any problems? The C is confirm. There's nothing worse than when you have a meeting with somebody or you arrange a meeting with somebody and then you turn up to it and they don't because they've forgotten or they've got the time wrong or whatever, a multitude of reasons. It just helps if you confirm it. You send someone a text message and just say, really looking forward to seeing you at 10 at wherever. Just confirms it. The M is move. So if an easy example is if you've got a city centre meeting in the first thing in the morning and another one last thing in the evening, can you move them? Can you move one of them to make them together and cut down on travel time? Or can you move both of them away from rush hour? If you can move things around, that can really help you. And the final one, E, is evaluate. Evaluate the benefit of the outcome from this thing that you've got scheduled in and weigh it up against the time that it's going to take you to achieve it. If it's not worth the time that you're putting into it, then don't do it. If it is worth the time that you're doing, then great. But there's another thing I can tell you about later, which is about valuing your time, but I'll come to that later. That helps with the evaluation. But yeah, that's my example. I've taken a long while to go through it. I appreciate that. But
there's so many things of it that I really, really like. And one of the things that I know for sure is when I'm in the good habit, and I often do this on like a Friday afternoon, and today's a Friday when we're recording this, and it is in my diary to do it. So when I spend even just 45 minutes or an hour looking at my week ahead, knowing what I've got, planning what I've got, it really settles my mind that it's going to be okay next week. So sometimes, you get that kind of stress that's there, but doesn't need to be there. And the weeks where I don't do that, I find my weeks are more difficult and I can't manage my time. And it's only an investment of like 45 minutes just to look and understand. So I totally get the scheduling time to schedule time. Yeah. It definitely makes a difference to me personally. So that, and then I'm just sitting here listening to your Acme one, and number one, I was thinking that's some deep thinking about the Roadrunner. Wiley Coyote.
Welcome to my mind.
And people often laugh at me because I do things like quote quotes from TV shows and say this is like really inspirational to me, and they go, Beth, why is Grey's Anatomy so inspirational? I'm like, no, it's not about Grey's Anatomy. It's like the quote within it is amazing. And so I'm like, I was sitting there giggling at myself that somebody else who reads a lot of stuff into things that other people don't read things into. They love it. And then the Acme stuff, really, really interesting. And that anticipate and doing it while you have your coffee in the morning or while you eat your breakfast or while you're brushing your teeth or whatever, thinking about what you have there and kind of that habit stacking thing, isn't it? It's like saying, while I'm doing this, if I add this on, it just becomes what I do. And it's not, people often think that it's about doing extra work, it's about extra time for thinking. You're just using time you're already using. You've already got that time for having your coffee or whatever. And I'm loving that anticipate, confirm, move, and evaluate. And especially that last one. Is it worth it? Is it something that is worth spending that time on? And being, then that might sound quite brutal, but just being really choosy, isn't it, about how you spend your time in your life to make the most of things?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's there's a few things on that with scheduling and evaluation. The value in your time thing, I find is really useful. There's something on. I'll give you a link to the website. It's completely free. It's just a little calculator tool on my website, but it values your time, gives you an hourly rate, and it takes into account your desired income for the next year.
Yeah.
It divides it between the number of weeks that you want to work in the year to achieve it, and then it divides that by the number of hours per week that you want to work. It takes into account a bit of time where you'll be working on non-income generating activities as well, so working on the business instead of in the business, that kind of thing. And it gives you an hourly rate. And let's say, for example, that comes out, just for easy maths, it comes out £100 as your hourly rate. Then you can make a pretty good decision when you're evaluating about whether a £50 task is worth your time. And a £50 task, you'd say, I'm not going to spend more than half an hour on this because it's just not, it doesn't fit with the value of my time. And if it's £200 task, then you can say, I can afford to spend a couple of hours on this.
Yeah. So actually really valuing what you're doing with your time and how much that's worth. If you're in a business, how much that's worth to the business. It's a really interesting part of looking at it. Can we go back and look at this structure thing, because you started talking about pyramids, and I have been on your website and looked at the pyramid, and I was like, ooh, number one, I like anything that comes in nice shapes, so you had me at pyramid. But you said here that there are 5 like real foundations that if you don't have them in place, you're probably not going to get very far with your time mastery. Can you tell us what some of those things are, so that we can think, actually, often I don't know about you, but often I think we try and aim for the top of the pyramid first, and actually sometimes aiming for the basics and just working on those for a while sets you up in a really good place to be able to do better things in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will actually start with kind of the end in mind a little bit and say, because we all like to know where we're going with it, don't we? The peak of the pyramid, the pinnacle of it, is what I think everybody wants in one way or another. And that's freedom. You want to be able to do what you want to do, when you want to do it, and how you want to do it. That's freedom, isn't it? That's what we all want with time mastery. I think. Please tell me if I'm wrong, but that's what I think.
And I think people might describe it in a different way. But when you said there, freedom and relates to having the time to do the stuff that you want to do. And for you, that might be family. So you're kind of really driven by that family time. For other people, it might be some kind of hobby that they have. For other people, it could be something else. So freedom to do the stuff that you want to do, kind of when you want to do it, is I really like that as a goal in mind.
Yeah, and I mean, it can be freedom. It can be more work, and that's okay. If you want more time to do more work, that's great. Good for you. But whatever you want, whatever freedom means to you, that's the goal. And working down on it, there's all sorts of things like having the right balance, being productive, getting better organized, being disciplined, having clarity, communication, and consistency, building the habits, having the strength to follow through with your plans and stuff like that. But the base level, the foundations, where all of the things we've just said will fall down if you don't have these things in place, from my experience, is there's 5 blocks. The first one is why. And you hear lots of people talking about their why, and they say, oh, my family and things like that. That's all great. It's all very positive stuff. It's not exactly what I mean in the why that I'm talking about. It's just, why are you trying to be better with your time? What will it mean to you? Will it mean that you can do? It's linked to freedom. What is freedom? Why do you want to do this? Is it so that you can have more time with your family? Is it so that you can earn more money, or something else? Being really clear about why you're trying to be better with your time will keep you focused in times of adversity, which you're going to face every day because there's so many distractions out there. Why is the first one. The second block is self-awareness, and it's knowing what you're good at and what you're not good at with time management. So when you're aware of that, you can know the things that are likely to distract you, and you can know the things that are likely to set you back. A bit like what we were
Yeah.
talking about before in the anticipation with Acme. It's,
Yeah.
you can anticipate things better if you know what your weaknesses are.
Yeah. So I'm thinking here like total confession time, because people
Yeah.
like it when we kind of talk about the things
Yeah.
that we're not so good at as well. So what am I good at time management wise? I'm good when I've got a lot to do. I'm good when I've got clients who need things and they need things by a deadline. I am totally terrible when I don't have a deadline enforced by somebody else.
Yeah.
And if I have a whole day to do something, just the procrastination that sets in if there's a whole day to do something. And I like, in time management terms, I need that whole day to do it in the hours that I have. But if I have a whole day without anything else to do, getting going for me is really hard. And the deadline thing, if I've set myself a deadline, it's like it's the most flexible thing in the world. If a client set a deadline, it'll be done before the deadline. There's that. Getting, and it's taken me a while to understand those things. And now that I know them, I can do that. Okay, let's really evaluate what's going on here. Stuff.
Yeah.
And I suppose the other thing there is, for me, when I'm looking at that, is if I know that, I can plan my time better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you dipping into lots of different things there as well with the procrastination thing. I have a tip for that, which is about getting mad about procrastination. It's about knowing your motivation, which is coming back to your why, and then having those mini deadlines. There's students do it all the time. They get a 3-month deadline. They wait 2.5 months, then they think about it. Then they do it the day before it's due. And it's all because of that deadline. If it's broken down into mini deadlines and milestones, it's so much more effective. And the third part of MAD, the middle part, I guess, is accountability. You've got to have somebody who's holding you accountable to actually doing it. That can be family if it's a personal commitment that you're trying to achieve, or it can be a work colleague or a customer, or you've got to have those 3 things. But yeah, so being aware of it is massive. I actually have a thing on my, again, on the website, and it's free again. I'm not flogging anything here. It's all free. But there's a thing called the MOT test, a mastery of time test, that is a series of questions. Takes you about 5 minutes to do it, but it sends you an instant PDF report of all of your strengths and weaknesses in time management.
Brilliant.
Which is pretty cool. So if anybody wants to have a go at that, then please do.
Brilliant. We'll put the link in the show notes so that people can go and have a go.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. So first 2 blocks are why and awareness. The next one is vision. So having a real clear vision of what does that freedom look like. So you know why you're going for it, but what does it look like? If you talk about it as if you've already achieved it, so I now spend 2 days per week doing whatever it is that you want to do, or I now have I now go for a run 3 times a week, every week, for more than you know what I mean? You talk as if you've already done it. That's the vision. It links very nicely with the next block along, which is planning, which is exactly what we've just spoken about, Beth, which is breaking it down into milestones and saying, if my vision is that in 12 months I'm going to be doing this, then if I'm on track at 9 months, what does that look like? And then having that, and then say, if I'm going to be there at 9 months, where do I need to be at 6 months? If I'm going to be there at 6 months, where do I have to be at 3? 1 month. If I'm going to be there in a month, where do I have to be next week? And if I'm going to be there next week, what do I have to do today?
Yeah, it's like project managing your approach to this time, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like going, actually, this is now a project. I am really focused on making this happen.
Yeah.
And I'm also thinking that, you talked about there, if you want to have this many days to do this, but also you could focus on something smaller, couldn't you? You could say, I want to spend an hour focused time with my kids every day, or I want to spend an hour once a week doing a hobby or something that I've never managed to actually get the habit to fit in. That it doesn't have to be a huge thing. It could be something quite small, but actually planning it and working it out will help you get there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that things like that work more effectively, I think, when it's not things that you have, it's things that you are doing and processes and things that you are, because those habits will will pay dividends, won't they? They'll move on and keep giving you the kind of life that you're looking for.
And I suppose if you do the small stuff, prove to yourself that you can do this, that you can make the time to do the stuff that you want to do. So there's that little bit of momentum in your motivation that, hang on, if I manage to carve out an hour to do this, I could carve out another hour to do something else I really want to do, because I know the process now. I've got confident with how I make that happen, and I've built it as a habit. So it's going to happen now anyway. So what else could I do, and how could I kind of stack that up?
Yeah, definitely. It is said before, a domino effect. Once you start doing things that help you with your time management, then it becomes easier to do other things that help you. And before you know it, it's actually really easy, to cut chunks off your week. If you set your mind to it, it's quite, it's very, very achievable to free up time. The problem is, and this links me into the final block on the foundation layer, is that a lot of it is to do with mindset as well.
Right.
That's the fifth block on the bottom line. And people always want more, don't they? More money, more time. That's what everybody wants. But if the thing is with having more of anything is that it only serves to exaggerate the relationship that you've already got with it. So if you waste money, then having more money probably isn't the answer, because you'll just waste more money. If you waste time, if you procrastinate, if you spend time in the wrong areas doing the wrong kinds of things, having more time isn't the solution, because you'll just do more of the wrong things and waste even more and procrastinate even more. It's more about, instead of wanting more, you need to make more of the things that you've got. And there's so much stuff going on in the world at the moment. You don't need me to tell you everything that we've been through in the last 18 months and all the challenges. And I'm not belittling that for a second. I'm not. There's lots of things that we can't control that have happened, and challenges that have been there. But alongside that, and even before everything that's been going on, since time began, there's always been excuses from people of why they're not going to do things. How you can say, I'm not going to do this because today's day ends in a Y, or whatever. You can make excuses for anything. And the mindset shift is saying, I'm not going to try and control everything, but I am going to try and shift from excuses to responsibility in the things that are within my circle of influence. So if for instance, if it's chucking it down, it's raining, it's horrible weather outside, it's grey, it's windy, it's cold, you can't do a lot about that. But you can influence your mindset, and you can say, do you know what? I'm going to put my coat on, I'm going to get my umbrella up, I'm going to put my boots on, and I'm going to make the best of this. And I'm going to get out and do what I can with what I can influence.
Yeah, and it's interesting that with the weather analogy, because I always think it's not the weather that's the problem, it's your outfit.
Exactly, yeah. Exactly.
I know that you've got a dog as well, a fellow dog walker, is that you have to go for a dog walk, whatever the weather it is. Yeah. And sometimes, like I did the other day, you end up totally soaked because you've worn the wrong thing. But that's not the weather's fault. That's you not taking responsibility or planning what you should actually wear when you look out the window.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely.
And I think there's this great phrase, and I don't know if you use it, but I've heard it many, many times before, is it often happens when people are in the workplace and people say, well, I haven't got time to do that. And if you change that to, it's not a priority, and then check yourself against that, you can make time to make anything happen, right? If you start with that mindset that you can find the time to do the important stuff. Yeah. If you say this isn't a priority, and then check yourself, because if it is, you're probably doing something that isn't a priority, and you need to swap your time over and do something else. So that, I think, really helps me when I'm thinking about, have I got enough time to do something, is this a priority?
Yeah. And when you've got people directing things to you and saying what they want you to do, that can be a challenge. But I always like to think of yes, but as a response. So you can say, can you do this for me? Yes, but how would you like me to prioritize that against this other thing that you've already asked me to do?
And that also then comes back to your good point about kind of scheduling time to schedule time, is if you don't know what's on your agenda, what's on your list, what you've got to do, it's very hard in that moment if your boss comes over and says, can I add this to you? And it's got a really urgent deadline to say, yes, I can. Which one of these other 3 things can move down the priority list and be done next week?
Exactly.
Because if you don't know, you probably just end up taking it on and then taking it on and then taking it on and then feeling like everything is overflowing.
Yeah. A good time habit, another one that I use and I would suggest that other people do is when you are asked to make a commitment, then always delay it. Never make a commitment there and then. So when customers might ask you, when can you have this done by? And you think you really want to impress them and you want to come across really well. So they say, can you do it by the end of the day? And you go, yeah, of course I can. And then you leave the meeting and think, oh my word, why did I say I could do that? I can't do that by the end of the day. And then you're stressed and you're overscheduled, you make mistakes and all the rest of it. So the response I like to give is, I wouldn't, the last thing I want to do is say to you that I'll definitely do it by the end of the day and then not be able to do it. So if it's okay with you, I'll go and have a look at my calendar and then I'll confirm it with you.
Yeah.
It just gives you that bit of time to think logically instead of in the heat of the moment.
Yeah, and it's funny, isn't it? Because we always think that other people have these massively high expectations of when these things can be done by.
Yeah.
And I've done that before, as a business owner, and maybe it's slightly different in the working context, but as a business owner, where you go, oh yeah, I'll do it for you tomorrow. And then someone goes to me, oh, I'm away, so I'm not going to look at it till next week anyway. And you're like, oh, why did I offer to do it in such a short amount of time? If you say things like, would the end of next week be okay for you? Or is there a reason you need it sooner than that? Most people will go, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's managing our own expectations of what we do versus necessarily the other people. And sometimes, of course, there's going to be clients or there's going to be bosses or there's going to be things that it's got to happen today. Yeah. And then it's the choice of, okay, so what gives?
Yeah. Well, there's loads of stuff we can do. Emails is the bane of a lot of people's lives. You end up with loads of emails in the inbox. They get an email and think it'll take me about 20 minutes to deal with that, but I don't have 20 minutes now. So they leave it. And then they get another one that will take them 15 minutes, but they don't have 15 minutes now, so they leave it. And before they know it, they've got an inbox full of tasks and things that they need to do. They're scrolling up and down them thinking, what on earth do I need to do? I'm drowning here. Then they miss things and there's big problems from it. But a little tip that lots of people don't know, but if you don't know it and you implement it, it will be a massive help to you, is that you can drag and drop emails in most things like Outlook and Gmail and stuff like that. You can drag and drop emails over your calendar. And if you do that, then it will open up an entry in your calendar where you can find a space where you've got 20 minutes to be able to do that. It takes it out of your inbox, but it's in your calendar. It'll give you a reminder at a time that you're free to do it. Then it's got the link to the email, everything else. And you've not done it, but it's in hand and you've dealt with it.
Yeah.
So that's massive. And I think the other thing as well is that one thing that people are rubbish at in general is estimating how much time things are going to take. So they, because you think of things as how long it should take in an ideal world. And so let's say you get something that should take you about 10 minutes to do normally. Lots of people schedule 10 minutes for it and think that should be fine. But stuff always happens. The doorbell goes, the cat's sick on the floor, there's the baby's crying, whatever it is, there's always going to be something. Somebody will call you, there'll always be something that comes up. So I always advocate to people that to account for that, it's another when and then, when you're estimating how long something will take, then always add VAT, valuable additional time. And your rate of VAT can be whatever you want it to be. It could be 10%, it could be 20%. But the principle behind it is that if you think something should take you 10 minutes, give 15 for it. And just, there's only 2 outcomes that can come from that. One of them is that you do it in the time that you should have done it and you've now freed up some time, which is lovely.
Which will get filled by the sand stuff anyway, right?
Exactly, yeah. And the other way is that something does come up, the phone rings, you take a phone call, you get back to it, you still get stuff done that you needed to do. So there's loads of habits that if you can implement them into your life, it can really help you. One of the key ways to develop habits, because that's the tricky bit, is putting these habits in place, is by streaking. And a lot of people raise their eyebrows when I start saying that streaking is something that I advocate. But what I mean is just doing something for as many days as you can in a row without breaking the chain.
Yeah.
How long does it take to build a habit? 21 days, 66 days, 100? Who knows? It depends on the habit. It depends on you.
Yeah.
But if you do it enough times in a row, it will become a habit eventually.
Yeah.
So, and why does streaking work? Because when you're getting that tick every day, and you know you're on a 64-day run, 56-day streak, it's a lot to lose by not doing it. So it makes you do it because you don't want to lose your streak. And
it builds
before
momentum,
you know it,
doesn't it? And then you really want to do it because you're feeling the benefit of it, and then it just eventually just becomes something you do without even thinking about it. You just have to, you almost have to formalize it before it becomes the informal habit that you just know. Exactly. There are so many things that we could carry on talking about for ages. However, and what I would say is thank you for it. We'll put all the links to the websites that people can go and look at this stuff, links to your book, etc. Because there are so many things here that I think if people could implement them, they would really help them in their world to feel great and be able to get some joy from their work and be able to get some joy in their life because they've made time to do the things that are important to them, whether that's work or life or a combination of both of those things. But for now, are you okay if we move on to some quick fire questions?
Of course, yeah.
Right. My first question for you is, for you personally, what is always guaranteed to bring you a bit of work joy?
A bit of work joy. I think it's progress, because to me, progress is the most motivational thing. Whatever you're doing, if you can feel like you're making progress towards your vision and the goal that you ultimately want, then that brings you a lot of joy, I think, and a lot of motivation.
Brilliant. Thank you. What book are you currently reading?
I have a few that I've been looking at. I tried to do something a bit different with the last one. I usually tend to gravitate towards the same types of books, but I was trying not to do that, to try and broaden my kind of reading a little bit. So the last one that I was looking at was actually Matthew McConaughey's book called Green Lights.
I've heard of this. Is it good?
I really enjoyed it. I thought it was good. And I don't know where you stand on the whole paperback versus audio book kind of position, but this one I would certainly recommend that you do on audiobook, because his voice, he reads it, his voice is incredible. He's so engaging, and I really enjoyed that book.
I have to say, I love an audiobook and I love a paperback. I love both of those things. I don't do e-readers. That's not my thing. I have to have actually physical media in that world. But sometimes if I really enjoy a book and I've read it, I'll listen to it, and vice versa, because I don't know about you, but I get different things from it listening to reading, and you notice different bits. So love it. I might have to have a little look at that one. I have heard it mentioned a few times. So great, thank you. What is the best or most useful bit of advice that someone has given you in your life that you always find yourself coming back to?
I think it's about not limiting yourself to what of what you can achieve. So there's actually a line. It was something that was in the Matthew McConaughey book, actually, and it is something that has come up a few times, where people say roofs are man-made structures, and they hold things down, and they make you believe that you can only get to a certain level, and you start feeling nervous if you get towards it and you're getting high up. Why have that? Why have that kind of artificial ceiling on what you can achieve? It's that mindset thing, isn't it? Don't think that you can't. Some people say, "Oh, you can chop chunks off your week." There'll be some people who roll their eyes and go, "Oh, yeah, whatever. You can't do that. I couldn't do this, because that, because the other." Why are you limiting yourself like that? Give yourself every opportunity to achieve the things that you really want.
Yeah, really, really great one. Thank you. So what is one super practical bit of advice to our listeners, that's something that they could really easily go and do today, tomorrow, the next day? What would it be, and why would you pick that?
Okay. There's a few. Which one shall I go for? I'm going to say, I'm going to go back to emails as a thing.
Okay.
And I'm going to say lots of people have their emails open on the screen, and it's just ready to distract you. You're setting yourself up to fail if you've done that. And they do. The reason they do it is because they know that if they don't want to miss an email and they don't want to miss a phone call. So set up automated things that allow you to take time away from that. So, what do I mean by that? I mean, on email, you can set an auto reply that says, in the interest of time management, I check my emails every few hours. If it's urgent, please give me a call on this number.
Yeah.
And if you set your voicemail to something like, I'm dealing with, I'm sorry, I can't answer you at the moment, but I will call you back as soon as I can. If it's urgent, please call this. Then you're not that worried about not seeing an email as soon as it comes in and not answering a phone call first time. It's interesting, actually. I did a bit of research into this with, especially the not answering phone calls. People say, don't answer calls from numbers that you don't know. I was saying don't answer calls from numbers that you do know. apart from a few, like the nursery calls, then obviously I'm going to answer that because it might be something wrong. But if it's one of your friends or somebody who just let it go to voicemail, because what I found from my time doing this was that when you let it go to voicemail, you can pick up the message and check that it's nothing that is actually urgent. Most of the time, it's not. You've given them the option, if it was urgent, to to call you on an office number or whatever. Plus, if somebody rings you 6 times in a row within about 2 minutes, you'd think that you need to speak to them. But when people ring you, if you let it go and call them back in an hour, it's not unreasonable. If you're in a meeting, you'd call them back in an hour. So call them back in an hour. 70% of the time, they didn't need me anymore. It was something that they sorted themselves. They're like, I was just wondering this, but I found it now. Great, no problem. And you can cut out a lot of the sand, a lot of the stuff that you don't want to be dealing with. That's just noise in your day. By not answering your phone.
I think as well the neuroscience looking at the ping of the email and the kind of distraction of notifications and stuff, and I think it's something like, and don't quote me on this, but it's something like it takes 22 minutes to get your brain back into the zone after you've gone and looked at an email. And it's like, why would you waste 22 minutes? That's not a good use of time, is it? It's a total waste of time to do it in that zone. So I love the idea of, having that auto response. And you're right, if you were in a meeting, you wouldn't be picking up your phone. So why is your time less valuable when you're not in a meeting than it is when you are in a meeting? Exactly. So again, if you come back to that understanding your time, that's a really, really great thing to consider.
Yeah, and nobody knows if you're in a meeting or not, do they? But the funny thing on that stat, by the way, I heard that as well, Beth. I'm not going to quote you on it because you said not to, but it's 22 minutes yet. But the other part to that stat as well is mind-boggling, and that is that in an office environment, they reckon that people on average get distracted every 11 minutes. So if you get distracted every 11 minutes and it takes you 22 minutes to get back into what you were doing, then you're never going to do it. It's maths that doesn't work.
You will have been distracted again before you actually get your brain back in.
Yeah.
Oh, you see now I'm like, oh, that's horrible. Need to sort that out. So I love that. All the ideas, things you can do with emails and voicemails and, picking up the phone, not picking up the phone, when to do all that. Brilliant. Where can people find out more about you? I mean, you suggested there's stuff on the website. What's your website? Where can people follow you? How can they buy your book? That kind of information would be amazing.
Yeah, great. Well, the value in your time calculator, the MOT test, and details about the book are all on my website, which is 27andahaf.co.uk. That's the number 2, number 7, and then letters ANDAHALF.co.uk. And social media wise, LinkedIn is the platform I use the most. You can find me on there as Stephen Watson.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. We'll put that link into the show notes so that people can kind of click straight through and find out more about you. It's been so fascinating, and I definitely would want to spend another few hours taking everything out of your brain and putting it into my brain so that I can go and be better with my time. But thank you so much for coming on and for being a guest on the WorkJoy Jam.
Thank you for having me, Beth. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the WorkJoy Jam with Stephen Watson. What a great guest, and some really amazing practical things that we can all think about doing, focusing on, building our habits to be better with our time so that we can find that freedom to do more of what things we want to do when we want to do them. Love it. I mean, so many great things about the habits that we have there, and I really loved those 5 foundational things that we can all think about when we're approaching getting better at our time management, and thinking about how can we get those in place for ourselves. With the habits, I love the when and then. So the when I am having my morning coffee, then I think about. When I am doing this, I make sure and that habit stacking, I think, can be a really powerful thing for us all in creating new habits that are more helpful to us. And it's one thing we actually work on the WorkJoy Way coaching program, is what habits do we have and which ones are helpful and which ones are hindering us, and how do we work with those ones that are helpful to really maximize what they're doing and to build new ones. I also think that's really interesting about how do you value your time. And as he said, he's got his little calculator on the website, so go have a look at that. And the ACME, the anticipating, the confirming, the moving and the evaluating of what you are doing with your time. So some really interesting things there, so many that I couldn't just pick out one. And I think it's one of those things that we can all do with a little help with. I don't think I know anybody who thinks they've got time management totally nailed. So hopefully some things that you can take away and to action. And I'd love you to comment to tell us what those actions were for you. Do go and have a listen to our other episodes. This is season 3. We have season 1 and season 2, so there's plenty of things to listen to from all different perspectives about some things you can do to set yourself up for joy and to get more joy into your working life. We also have Club WorkJoy, our membership program where we have amazing speakers, an incredible community. We do networking, all with people who are trying to cultivate more joy in their working life from many different organisations, different industries, different roles. And that community with perspective is such a great place to be. So do head to the website www.createworkjoy.com to find out more and to join us. We'd love to have you there. And of course, you can follow us on all the socials at Create WorkJoy, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. I hope to see you there at some point soon. Thank you for listening today. This has been the WorkJoy Jam.